Good evening, and thanks for joining us on the Week in Review. I'm Brandis Friedman. Nick Blumberg has the evening off. As more brutally cold temperatures push into the city this weekend, some Southside neighbors are looking for new homes.
It's not that people don't want to leave. It's not that people are dragging their feet. It's that it's hard. People found out about this vacate date November 26th.
Residents have until today to move out of their South Shore apartment complex that was the site of an immigration raid earlier this year after a judge denies an extension request.
Dropping off the kids at school, going to the park with your family, going to the doctor, showing up at your job has meant risking your safety and your livelihood.
Governor J.B. Pritzker signs a bill aimed at protecting immigrants living in Illinois from federal enforcement near courthouses, hospitals, college campuses, and daycares. But will it pass legal muster?
We continue to be open to negotiations and compromise, but we will not sacrifice the poor and working people of Chicago to balance this budget.
Budget deadlock at City Hall as a rival proposal pushes forward.
I won Indiana all 3 times by a landslide, and I wasn't working on it very hard. Would have been nice. I think we would have picked up 2 seats if we did that.
Indiana Republican lawmakers break with President Trump and reject a plan to redraw the state's congressional maps. Plus, the Trump administration threatens to withhold CTA funding. There's still no consensus on whether to implement a citywide hemp ban. And keep your shovels handy as Chicago sees the snowiest start to winter in nearly 50 years. And now to our Week in Review panel. Joining us are Maxwell Evans from Block Club Chicago, Monica Eng from Axios, our own Patty Wetley, and Rufus Williams from WVON. Welcome in, everybody. Thanks for joining us. So we just heard Governor Pritzker talking about some legislation in order that he signed earlier this week. But just today, he also signed the Medical Aid in Dying bill. This makes Illinois the 12th state to give terminally ill adults the option to use life-ending medication, sometimes known as doctor-assisted suicide. Monica, rather controversial bill. Bring us up to speed on what it does and the concerns.
Sure. Well, Governor Pritzker said that he thought a lot about this before he signed it, but he says that they're going to put in place safeguards to make sure, you know, the least harm can be done as possible. 2 different doctors have to assure that the patient in question has less than 6 months left. They have to give oral and written requests for this. It can't be a surrogate. It has to be the actual person. They have to be considered of sound mind when they do it, and they have to be informed of pretty much all the details around it if it's going to happen. And it would go into place in September.
And what's been some of the concern?
Well, that, you know, a family member or there could be some foul play, or someone would not be thinking clearly when they do it. And maybe they're not as sick as maybe someone says. So I think some of those safeguards could help that.
Maxwell, what's been some of the reaction to this? What do you think of this?
Yeah, so seeing it come as Deb's Law being introduced by an actual person going through a situation like this, I thought it was really interesting to have a patient advocate for this. I actually come from Michigan, and so the name Jack Kevorkian has been on my mind, honestly, since I was a young kid. And so being able to kind of see the conversation around this develop from purely antagonistic, and this sounds like an awful thing, to the fact that our governor is signing something into law around this, it's been really intriguing to see over the last few years.
Right, and that we're becoming the 12th state to do this, right? Mm-hmm. So that means other states have been doing this all along since, of course, we've heard of the Jack Kevorkian, all of that happened back when it did, yeah. Patty, did you want to add?
No, just there's that scary meme attached to it, I think, which has given it a certain reputation over the years, and this making sure that people are well informed, and those safeguards you said, it has to be, you know, specific conditions. You're going to terminal diagnosis within 6 months. That takes a little bit of the kind of, I guess, scary factor out of it.
Yeah, but it's just a tough one, you know, morally and otherwise. I lost my mother 2 months ago, and I know we loved every single moment all the way to the very, very end. And so to think about shortening that in any way, while it may seem selfish in some points, it's just a very difficult thing because it's so final when it happens. So I suspect this will be one that will be just as Kevorkian was, will continue to be discussed until the end of time.
Our condolences on your mother.
Thank you.
Tough day as well for residents in the South Shore. Today's the eviction date for residents of that Southside building that was also the site of that very high-profile immigration raid back in September. Maxwell, you were there today as it was move-out day for them. Describe what you saw.
Yeah, to be quite honest, it was quite a bleak scene. A lot of residents were, this has been such a fast process. A lot of residents were pulling out their suitcases, pulling out their items that they had just packed up in the past week or so. A judge had ordered them out as of late November to be out by today, and with this kind of being the final chance that residents had to see their homes, a lot of them felt glad to not be in a building that had had so many problems, so much negative attention around it. But if they didn't have any other place to go, they really felt kind of rushed, and as if quite a few of them actually told me they were going to be on the streets for tonight if they weren't able to find help from the city, help from private charities. So yeah, it was truly a sad scene to watch people leave their homes.
Were any private charities on the scene there to help?
The city, the mayor's office was actually connecting people with Catholic charities to hopefully find temporary housing. I did speak with a couple of people who told me early in the morning that they had nowhere to go, who then, after the mayor's office had showed up, said, okay, I've got a place at least for the short term. But looking at the long term, it's not easy to be a renter. Prices are very high. It's very difficult to get approval processes if your landlord doesn't like your credit, certain aspects about you. So temporary relief seems to be there for a lot of the residents, but long term, a lot of people are unsure what's going to happen.
No, those residents, they had also been complaining for a very long time about the conditions of the building, which the rest of us didn't really know about until that immigration raid that happened back in September. Sort of bring us up to speed on why this building is getting so much attention.
Yeah, so some of the reporting that I've done that come out of this, one that really shocked me is that over the last 5 years, there has been, on average, one emergency call, more than one emergency call around that building, about that building, every day for the past 5 years. So I think about being in my own building where in 3 years, I don't think there's been one police call, one emergency call. To have one, more than one, every day for 5 years, that to me speaks for itself in terms of the conditions at this building. And so again, people were in some way celebrating to not be in a living situation such as that. But again, who's to say where they're going to go after this?
And then that immigration raid, just to sort of, compound the existing issues. Rufus, long history of, displacing black people in the city of Chicago. Do you think this is just a reflection of that legacy?
This certainly elevates it. And there has been a long history. We go back into the whole issues of contract leasing and redlining and losing property. There's a big discussion now about property taxes in these same South and West Side areas that are, again, have the potential of displacing black people. Here, where you saw in the raid that happened when ICE came in, you saw a lot of people who were removed from the building. The building was further impacted by that. When you start to hear the stories of how people are living, you know that's a very difficult situation. But you also know that this is what people have to do. And if they had someplace better to live, they'd probably live someplace better. It's kind of the end of the road. And to think that we're now on one of the coldest weekends of certainly this season, and people are now looking for some place to go. And even with the $5,000 or the $7,500 that's going to be given to them, it's not a lot, it's not much. They get you through these very difficult times when you've got to start over. So yes, the displacement and what you saw in the media of the people who were outside talking about it, these were all black people from down in this area, and it's just really troubling to see, hear, and know at this point in time.
And I think it ended up being $5,000 in loan assistance that they received. They requested $7,500, and I think it was denied. Monica, you published an article this week about the 12 disputed or disproven claims made by DHS regarding Operation Midway Blitz. The South Shore raid, of course, was mentioned. DHS initially claiming, though, that building was filled with gang members and violent criminals. That wasn't really the case.
It wasn't the case, and 0 charges ever came out of that entire dramatic MTV-style, video raid. Other things were they're only going after the worst of the worst. Well, only 26% of anybody nationally that is detained right now has any criminal conviction. Only 3% of those picked up in Midway Blitz have any violent criminal convictions. The vast majority have 0 charges against them. Another one is Kristi Noem said they're not picking up any citizens. Well, ProPublica says 170 citizens have been detained and arrested under this. Bivino said he didn't throw the tear gas in Little Village until he was hit on the head with a rock. Well, guess what? In his deposition, he was like, I guess that's not true. And then he said, well, I was almost hit by a rock. And then, I guess that's not true. Is that perjury? I don't know. But this pattern, and basically I was quoting my reporting, but also that of wonderful Block Club, WBEZ, ProPublica reporters, and just putting it in one place. And there's real value in that because it shows a pattern. And so when you see all of these lies, I have never covered an administration that lies with, well, that puts out statements that turn out to be untrue with such impunity. And I think that really can erode the trust in institutions.
And the reporting that you said that you put all in one place so you can see all of these 12, these reporters, they're also, figuring all this out by examining, video and other, evidence that proves that, that these claims aren't what they say they are. Were there any other disputed claims that really stood out to you?
Well, the one with Miramar Martinez, who was shot 5 times because supposedly she rammed her car into a DHS officer's car. That car was so damaged that he drove it to Maine. He bragged in text messages that he shot her, and then the charges against her were totally dropped. Her lawyer says she's the one who was rammed. She's the one who was physically, roughed up. I mean, well, more than that,
Certainly
5 times
5
shot.
shots, yes.
And so these things are overturned time and time again, where it's, oh, you assaulted or impeded an officer. Well, then why is the U.S. attorney dropping the charges?
Rufus, do you think there'll be any sort of repercussions for these misleading statements and actions?
That's just what I was thinking, because there's no accountability. There doesn't seem to be any repercussions for any of this. But what they do is then go to another city and do the same thing. And so when we see all these things happening, we don't want to be in the place where we're consistently suing the federal government, except we're in a place where there will consistently be lawsuits coming against the federal government. And somewhere there's got to be some pushback. We're getting closer to the time of the next elections, of the midterms, where there becomes some guardrails around some of the things that are happening. But we watch them go into Congress, we watch them go into the hearings, and we watch them continue to lie about the same things and come out, and we still wonder, where is the accountability? Where are the repercussions? And right now, other than the ballot box, we don't see them happening.
Governor J.B. Pritzker has signed a law this week. This prohibits federal immigration agents from conducting their business near courthouses, university campuses, hospitals, and daycares. Monica, what do you think the governor is trying to accomplish here, given that federal law supersedes state law?
Yeah, you see the feds say, hey, what about the supremacy clause, which means, if we're in the course of doing our DHS business, we cannot be impeded by a local law enforcement. I've asked the governor this a few times, and the last time he's like, Monica, I've got the same answer. We are very limited in what we can do, but this same provision that prohibits arrests outside these areas makes it easier to sue the federal government. I haven't seen exactly the details on how it's easier. I mean, I guess you could get $10,000 if you are arrested and detained illegally, but we are really hamstrung. And what the governor says is normally it would be the bosses of these agents who would hold them accountable, or the IGs, but their bosses don't seem to see anything wrong with it.
We're not seeing that happening yet. Additionally, federal prosecutors, they allege that Chicago Border Patrol agent Luis Uribe is a, quote, serial rapist. They've arrested and charged him with 10 counts of deprivation of civil rights, 1 count of brandishing a firearm during a violent crime. Prosecutors say these incidents took place in 2022, so not to be confused with anything that happened during Operation Midway Blitz. He's scheduled to appear in court next week. Monica, what do we know about this and how investigators found out?
It's such a disturbing case, and the fact that it's 2025 now and these happened in 2022 and they just apprehended him this week. It got to the point where they sent an envoy, a sex worker, to meet with him at a restaurant where that picture was taken, and said to him, if you stop all these assaults, if you stop basically sexually assaulting women at gunpoint and using your badge to do it, we will give you free sex. And he said yes, okay, and then he did it again. It's just so depressing to hear this, and that it went on for so long, and this was a law enforcement officer, and they're just now apprehending him.
Yeah.
But a law enforcement officer, and also these are the officers who were out with masks on their faces. So we don't know whether he was one of them or what else happens
Still unclear,
within these cases. But to think that this is someone of that who's supposed to protect, who's supposed to watch out for people, and this is what he's doing. There's so many things that are just so troubling around all of this, where people don't feel safe anymore within our own places, within our own country, irrespective of what our work or what our jobs are.
So turning to City Council, Mayor Johnson has made little headway on his spending bill. For some aldermen, this corporate head tax that the mayor has been trying to tweak and rework, it's been a non-starter. Monica, what are some of the major concerns there?
Well, I talked to the group of 27 who presented an alternate proposal, and I said to them, is there any version of the head tax that you would accept? And at least Matt O'Shea from the 19th said, nope, it's a non-starter. The others didn't quite say. And then when they presented their alternate plan with a garbage tax that isn't $18 but $15 a month, the mayor said he couldn't accept anything that would have an increased garbage tax. So you see a lot of heel digging on either sides. The corporate head tax is the big issue, but then you have liquor taxes, you have the introduction of video gaming terminals, you have the garbage tax, you have cloud computing taxes, and I think it's not going to help. We got December 31st as our deadline. Everybody's got to get in a room and say, what's going to be the shared sacrifice? Because it can't all be corporate. It can't all be taxes on the people. It can't all be labor. But there are going to be some sacrifices to be made, or else do we get a government shutdown, the first one that I've ever seen in Chicago? Yeah,
and another one that the mayor has said he will not tolerate is any cuts to the police department. Nothing that would mean fewer police officers, considering, what are they, still 1,700 vacancies of officers. And City Council, as you said, they've got less than 3 weeks to approve a budget and avoid a government shutdown. Last year, they approved this budget with just 18 days to spare. Rufus, how close are we going to get, considering where we are?
It's going
right
to
now?
be very, very tight, considering where we are, because it seems like everybody's dug in the places that they're dug in. This is one of the interesting things, because where the mayor has put the budget is saying we can get from these sort of taxes the kind of things that support programs to keep violence down. And we have seen those things happen here all the way through. So it's kind of asking the question of the other aldermen, do you want to see violence continue to be down? Does it make sense that we get money from the wealthy? Or when you start to get into things like garbage fees, those are hitting everyone. And we've already talked about the lack of this term that is real affordability. Those things hit hard, and everybody's staying away from property taxes, but it's still going to hit, and everybody's staying away from property taxes because those are already a big issue, particularly on the south and west side of Chicago. And so this is still going to hit those same people in different ways.
There is still no general consensus on a citywide hemp ban. A new proposal would carve out an exemption for THC-infused drinks sold at many restaurants and breweries. Monica, were you surprised that some people see this as a potential compromise?
Yes, the original plan, which would have banned the THC drinks and topical and pets, all of which are carved out of this one, I think that actually could pass. It got deferred and published, so could not be voted on at the meeting this week. Probably will be voted on in January. And I know that a lot of the pushback was the restaurants and the liquor distributors or the drink distributors who did not like that drinks were going to be included. So this could be the thing that pushes it over the edge.
I think there were brewers as well who are, we had a huge wave of microbreweries, and they're kind of surviving by pivoting into these THC drinks, and that would be a hit to them, and they're important to communities.
And as it is, they're already in a place where they're probably seeing a bit of a hit on their beer actual side, because fewer people are drinking it, and more people are sober curious, and the next generation doesn't drink as much as the last one does.
Because they have hemp.
And they've got the hemp and the legalized marijuana as well. So Alderman Brian Hopkins, he's got another attempt to impose teen curfews as a way to deter the teen trends, of gathering in mass, often causing a disturbance. Maxwell, are you familiar with this new proposal that's being proposed?
Yeah, and to be frank, I really struggle with the lack of opportunities for teens and for children to congregate in any sort of way. It's very clear that there are certain teens that are organizing these takeovers. We've seen some very violent things happen, but at the end of the day, to entirely say that our youth population in the city will have even fewer places to go, even fewer times to go to those fewer places, I really struggle hearing that. I'm not that far removed from my own teen life. I know that I struggled with having places to go as a child myself, and it's if I don't have these safe spaces, if I don't have times that I can be out, if I can't be with my friends, kind of learning myself, exploring things, what am I supposed to be doing? That frustration that grows within you is to me, is equally as dangerous as any sort of violent situations that you may be worried about.
Well, as someone who was arrested for curfew, not last week, but when I was at a fraternity party while I was still in high school over
I've
in
got
Rogers
so
Park.
much more I need to learn about this.
Yeah, my mom was not happy. She had to pick
sure.
me up at the police station. But now, someone who has adult kids, I do see this as a compromise. It's not the snap curfew that he had suggested before. It's called a time and place curfew that would have to be done 12 hours before it happens and have very specific time and place. And only if they know that there is going to be a teen trend that could possibly be an issue. So we'll see if these changes are enough to, again, get it out the door.
It kind of feels like, how hard is it to monitor that these are going to happen? If the teens are all aware and getting together, you would think
the grown-ups can find out.
Yes.
Supposedly they knew about the one on the tree lighting night, and they put 700 extra officers out there, but Brandon Johnson said because it was so crowded, they just didn't have the kind of agility and mobility they needed to address it. I don't know how this does that, but people are just searching. They're just grasping for answers.
Well, it's interesting. We just talk about the situation where they don't want to put more money in for the teens to have more to do and more programming, but then you put in these kind of snap curfews, and then what are children supposed to do in those situations? The police chief is also one who said the way in which it's been constructed so that it's the police chief and the head of safety, Gary Gatewood. Doesn't seem like enough, within those cases. These two pieces are making the decisions about the curfew.
Right, I don't want to interrupt, but before we run out of time, I definitely want to talk about the sad news about the family of police officer Crystal Rivera. She was killed in the line of duty earlier this year by her partner. Now, her family is suing both CPD and her partner, who is the shooter, her former partner. They claim that Rivera had broken off a romantic relationship with him, Officer Carlos Baker, shortly before the shooting. She was concerned. Rufus, what do you make of this revelation?
I think it stank from the very beginning. And so they go into a building allegedly after someone. There's one shot fired, and the shot that's fired ends up hitting this officer in the back. There are some other people in there, and I don't remember what happened with them in terms of charges or anything else, because they were going after the drugs. There was someone else with weapons. And this shooting happens, and now we find out all this backstory and all these other things about it. It's one, about Crystal Rivera and her family. Two, about, again, trust that we have with officers. But it's also down in a neighborhood, a black neighborhood. So now we've got all this other consideration about what happens and how you perceive people in these places. It's just, everything about this is just bad, everything.
All right, more to come on that. Patty.
Yes.
It's been a very snowy winter, and it's not technically, it's meteorological winter, but what gives? What's up with that?
Well, we have so far had the most snow this early in the season in almost 50 years. And as we talk about the budget, it's like, it might sound fun, let's all go sledding and skating, but
nope, it's not that
are we
fun.
going to have to pay more for snow removal? Is that built into the budget? From a personal standpoint, folks are possibly going to have to pay more for snow removal. I know a lot of contracts have, limits. We'll only shovel up to 38 inches, and then we're going to start charging you more. A lot of these landscaping companies are the same companies that lost staffing during the immigration blitz, so they're struggling to get crews, so they're charging customers more money. I mean, snow might sound like a silly subject, but it can actually have some serious economic implications for people at all levels. Yes.
Not silly at all if you were around in 1979 and your name was Michael Blandick.
I love seeing those pictures of Peterson School where I went to school in 1979. I was climbing snow hills. So glad you guys
shoveled for 2 hours.
That was you.
That Sunday, so not fun.
So, new study from Lincoln Park Zoo, Patty. We've got about 45 seconds.
Yes.
Their Urban Wildlife Institute found that cats actually aren't that helpful with the rat population.
Or they're very picky eaters. They perhaps are. They might be killing them, but they're not eating them, or they might just be chasing them away.
For fun.
For fun, but I mean, it is an issue because a lot of people have promoted feral cat colonies as a great solution to the rat problem. But if they're just pushing the rats from my house to your house, then then that's not really the most efficient way
Not
to
really
control
solving the
rats.
problem at all.
But the other issue is that we are using rodenticide, anticoagulant rodenticides, which unfortunately the rats are kind of building up an immunity to, but raptors, like our snowy owl visitors, are unfortunately eating these rats. And that was the first thing that I heard from people when I saw the snowy owls was like, oh my God, I hope they're not eating rats.
Rufus, you look really concerned, but I feel like we're going to have to come back to that later on because we're out of time. Our thanks to our Week in Review panel, Maxwell Evans, Monica Eng, and Patty Wetley and Rufus Williams. And we're back to wrap things up right after this.
Chicago Tonight is made possible in part by the Alexandra and John Nichols family, the Polk Brothers Foundation, and the support of these donors.
Our show for this Friday night. Be sure to sign up for our free email newsletter, The Daily Chicagoan, at WTTW.com/newsletter. Now for the Week in Review, I'm Brandis Friedman. Thank you for watching. Stay healthy, safe, and informed, and have a great weekend. Okay, so Patty, you also wrote a story about scientist Dave Willard, who devoted his career to documenting the birds killed in collisions with Chicago buildings. Tell us more about him and his work.
He's had such an amazing career. Like, we all know about the McCormick Place stuff, but I mean, he has gone on expeditions to South America, to this like lost mountain in Venezuela. He's discovered multiple new species of birds. One of the funniest things he said was he once led a tour of like field museum members to Antarctica, and I asked him like, what did you see in Antarctica? Like birds? And he's like, yes, but I also heard a lot of complaints from people that their pillows weren't soft enough.
Closed captioning is made possible by Robert A. Clifford and Clifford Law Offices, a Chicago personal injury and wrongful death firm that gives back to its community in Chicago and beyond.